Well, in the last item, I mentioned that it was a long time in coming that we got the plan here, and I will tell you that the A Street project is even much longer in getting to us, unfortunately. It's been a while since we have brought particularly the A Street project forward to council, so I know there's some new folks here that have not necessarily seen much on it in the past. They may or may not be familiar with it. So I wanted to take a minute or two and just talk a little bit about what the A Street and the Mountain View projects are, just to help set the stage a bit. And then we'll talk about funding, because we have a challenge related to funding. These are both grant-funded projects through the state and the State Surface Transportation Program urban system, and they both have funding shortfalls and varying amounts. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we may best manage that moving forward. So the A Street project, there really actually are a couple of components. The first phase of the A Street project built the piece that runs from Farm Road to just east of the Peterson Drive area. And that was the Phase 1 project that was built, I think in the 90s, or probably in the 90s. The second phase of the project is really what we're talking about today, and it has been around really since that time, somewhere in the 90s as well. It is probably the oldest project in the Surface Transportation Program system that is administered by the Idaho Transportation Department and Local Highway Technical Assistance Council, LTAC and ITD. It is a project that they would love to see completed, as would we. In its original form, it anticipated constructing A Street, reconstructing A Street from where Phase 1 terminated all the way to Jackson Street here, which is why then you see this big marker showing the location. It also anticipated reconstructing a portion of Line Street from State Highway 8 Pullman Road up to A Street.
Question for you, Les. Now you're talking about on that A Street, that real narrow piece that we've had to deal with for decades, widening that baby out for once, and so that it's not so congested.
Yes, it would widen it. It would still be, for the most part, a two-lane road configuration.
Yeah, exactly.
But it would have appropriate-sized lanes, retained parking on the one side where it exists today, primarily on the north side, but also then address the intersection of Line and A Street, which is problematic today, and will continue to get worse as traffic volumes in this area continue to grow. Of particular challenge is the Circle Drive component of that intersection, because it's very steep, and we have some interesting ways of addressing it. So that's the area of the A Street project. The portion that we currently are trying to address is really what I'm showing here in the circle. So the original boundaries went all the way to Jackson Street. We do not have the funding to do that, and have not had for 10 years, frankly. So what currently is in the program is to build really what's within this little circle here, which is from Home Street, again back to where Phase 1 ended, the intersection of Circle, and then coming south on Line Street to State Highway 8. So it is certainly reduced in size. The reason for that, frankly, is the topography and proximity of the homes along the stretch make it a particularly challenging roadway to build. A lot of retaining walls, and so a lot of high cost associated with that. Thus, a shorter project is what comes out of it. The Mountain View piece, a similar type of situation. Mountain View here. This is the new Moscow School District, Joseph Street Fields Park, if I can get all that out, the new ball field site. 6th Street coming in up in this area, and then the fairgrounds located here, Heron's Hideout. The original scope of this project really came from the 6th Street intersection, actually picking up on the end of those 6th Street improvements that were made with the Windfalls Hills plat that we were just talked about a few minutes ago, now the new one, and going all the way south to previously done work in the area of Paradise Creek. That project also has run into financial challenges having to do with the road section potentially having to be built differently than originally contemplated when the grants were applied for. So the area we're really talking about as a project now is from the Joseph Street intersection up to and including the 6th Street intersection. So those are the extents of the projects. Both of them will reconstruct the roadway or widen the roadway, and widen the roadway, including curb gutter, sidewalk, storm drainage where needed, the landscaping where it's appropriate for trees, those types of things. And I see a question rising.
Mayor, question regarding this. When was Mountain View cut back to Joseph?
In the preliminary design phase, so it's the concept report phase, it was determined that the funding, it was determined that based on the geotechnical work, that the recommendation of the consultants would be that we need to reconstruct the entire roadway section, not just widen it as we've done in other Mountain View projects. And it had to do with the soil conditions in this area, in that the creek comes through this part of the job, comes around, and then comes back through this part of the area. And so the soil conditions in this basin and what probably was floodplain at some time are not the best. When that happened, the project scope was, potentially being reduced to as little as 6th to 7th Street. We said, no, that's not going to work. So we went back with our consultants and the geotechs and assessed further with the ITD and LTAC, and ultimately determined that, yes, indeed, we could do a widening-related project rather than a complete rebuild. But even with that, there was a reduction in the overall length of the job that we could afford with the current pricing. So when all that happened was over the course of about the last 2 years. We're still working with the designers on the final extent of this project, still working out the numbers related to the design cost. It's gone through pre-design, preliminary environmental, preliminary geotech. We've not entered the design phase yet.
How many years total, Wes? We've been dinking around with Mountain View now, a decade,
Well,
8 years, 6 years? Because every year, originally
This
it's supposed to
particular
be-
job,
Since I've been on
originally,
council?
Yeah. it's
this
supposed to be-
particular job was originally, I believe, in the either 15 or 16 program year.
Yeah.
Due to lack of funding
Right.
from the grant agencies, they pushed it back to 2019, which is where it resides today.
And now we're looking at 2020
Now, this one would stay
at the earliest.
as it is right now in the 2019 funding year.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
unless we,
Now, the package we're going to talk about here in a few minutes will change that date.
Right.
And we'll talk about that.
But to follow up on my question about the reduction in scope and length, the council approved a project from 6th to the bridge.
That is correct.
Have we
That is the
heard,
application.
as a council, the problems you just reiterated and the fact that we're not talking about going to the bridge anymore?
The bridge by, if I may. The
Which bridge?
By White Avenue?
By the
Yes,
fairgrounds.
the council's been given a couple of reports on that.
That it's going to stop at Joseph?
The funding that was allowed, remember when we talked about the potential for a roundabout at Sixth Street and
I
talked
remember-
about a
I
reduced scope of the
I
project?
remember that.
Right.
Yeah, and
Yeah, that's
we
right.
also brought into, when could the council expect that final piece between Highway 8 and White, which would now be to the end of this project, would occur? So yes, it's been brought up several times.
No, Gary, I understand Highway 8 to White.
Yeah.
I understand the roundabout. All I'm saying is that I must have missed the council meeting that talked about not including Joseph to the north side of the bridge down at White Avenue in a project.